Let's just get into this. All right, so this one, I guess I'll just start off with the disclaimer kind of thing, because I'm going to get two sides of the argument on this. There's going to be the group that, this is all BS and it's impossible and that it's ludicrous and whatever, and it's they don't even want to entertain the idea. Then the other side is going to be, no, well, that's blasphemy because the book says it's so it has to be so, and you have to believe it or you're a sinner. So that's kind of basically going to be like, I guess, atheism versus creationism, and they're both really, atheism is dogmatic as well. It really is. I look at it as a different type of religion. To just disprove everything until you see proof type of thing. Well, it kind of, just because you haven't proven something yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist. For example, I've never seen a Ferrari 308 up close and personal. Doesn't mean they don't exist, right? That type of thing, because I haven't found the evidence that they exist. I just see it in pictures and stuff like that. I just use that as an example. So there has to be a certain amount of open-mindedness that has to be coming from this. Now, on the other side of the argument, you also have to understand that you are arguing from a point of view of faith. Now, for myself, you would not call me a hardcore Christian at all. I don't really have a practicing religion for myself. I just tend to find these things fascinating. Now, one thing about the people that do argue from a point of religious faith is that they are basically arguing just from that point, faith, meaning they don't have proof, they just believe it because the book says it is so. And they must understand that the people, wanting to see proof, they want to see more than a book that says it's so, because many books can say many different things. So before I get into this, I got basically two kind of things to read here. One's going to be, for some people, it's going to be a little over the top. For some of the creationists, that's going to be their argument, and then the other ones are a little more watered down, but still moving on that. And then you guys can debate back and forth. So I'll start off with this one. Petersburg, Kentucky. A panel of prominent scientists and paleontologists have discovered groundbreaking evidence that Jesus walked with dinosaurs. Jesus and his disciples walked with dinosaurs 2,000 years ago, and the Earth and universe are only at 10,000 years old. Independent scientists funded by the Christian Neocon Church of Kentucky have also decided that Adam and Eve wore fashionable garments given by God. This goes against the grains of the popular belief that they wore leaves over their genitalia in the Garden of Eden. There are some myriad of facts that have now been discovered that to be true, scientists working in tandem with archaeologists all over America. Evolutionary myth. Professor Alan Johnson of the University of Mobile, Alabama says, blasphemers and evolutionists deny the fact that humans and dinosaurs coexist. This is not the true Christian path that God and Jesus wrote about. Children and adults outside America are indoctrinated in the false belief that man did not coexist with dinosaurs straight from early childhood with the books that they teach in. It reinforces their schooling system, the media, and the entertainment industry. God wrote in the Bible that he created humans and dinosaurs on the same day. Jesus walked and talked with the dinosaurs. He even had one as a pet, an Algiosaurus. I can't remember which one. I think that's like a brontosaurus looking thing. Long neck, long tail, big fat body like an elephant. That type of thing. Which he kept in his carpentry workshop. Must have been a big shop. We have eyewitness accounts and scientific evidence about this, folks, and it's all in the Bible. The scientific study was not only encompassed with profound discoveries in 3 continents, but it also took 20 years of research and finally come up with the definitive answers to everything. Now, okay, this is probably going to be the part that's going to offend most people. Okay, depending on where you are. George W. Bush has been named the patron of the creationist movement. God help them. And was last year honored by the Kentucky Fry University of Masters in Younger Studies. Now, this is where we get into the kind of mockery part of it, right? Again, you got different people arguing here, so. Kentucky Fry has also discovered dinosaur footprints dated back 2,000 years ago alongside the footprints of man. Incredible discoveries long enough to cement in theory. And it's hardcore discoveries like the dinosaur claw mark and on the Turin Shroud, which have been proved evolutionists wrong in every way. More great Bible facts. Jesus was a pale, white-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and his endeared him. And this endeared him his pet Algiosaurus. Agilosaurus, or whatever how you say it. Okay, so there's going to be mockeries here. Going back to another argument here, there is evidence that suggested Jesus and the disciples had mullets and haircuts. Okay, no, okay, this is still the mockery guy. The disciples of the Messiah would often travel packs of large flying dinosaurs similar to the, I'm not going to say their names, but basically pterodactyls, on their way to the Sea of Galilee. The large flying reptile pterodactyls are also mentioned from the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ himself, speaking with Nicodemus in JN 3:14. Oh, okay, I guess this is back. Yeah, I don't know about the mullet haircut thing, but anyway, Noah's Ark carried many dinosaurs, including Tyrannosaurus Rex and Brontosauruses, as well as tiny insects and bugs. Adam saved Eve from being eaten by a Carnotaurus one day and was rewarded with intercourse. This is how the human race initially multiplied. So basically, that's pretty high standards when you have to save a chick from a dinosaur to get. Okay, anyway, but you know, standards are standards. Fair enough. Only Americans who believe in Jesus, only Americans believe in Jesus, walk with dinosaurs, will be taken up with him and his friends in heaven when the rapture comes. So now I can't tell if this is sarcasm or if this is if this is what according to a 2001 Gallup poll, I guess it's okay, so somebody's actually got this position. The 59% of Americans believe that God created humans and dinosaurs pretty much in their present form at one time within the last 10,000 years or so. Another 27% believe that human beings developed over millions of years from less advanced forms of life, but God guided this process. Only 14 believe that human beings have developed over millions of years from less advanced forms of life, but God had no part in the process. Don't forget to visit the Creation Museum in Kentucky, which realistically brings the pages of the Bible to life, designed by former Universal Studios exhibit college courtesy of Francesca Bernini. Okay, so that one's all over the place, so whatever. But anyway, so there's a bit of mockery there. There's a bit of whatever. Maybe that's actual position. I don't know. But anyway, the next one goes. This one's a little bit more. Goes a bit more kind of mellow. Dinosaurs are often portrayed as having lived the time before man. However, there is available evidence that shows dinosaurs coexisted. Legends of dragons found from most people and groups. For example, there are stories of Bel and the dragon, the Kutla and the Australian Aborigines, St. George and the dragon. Of course, many Chinese legends, often anatomically describing, given a consistent, descriptions are consistent, even though they come from a separate continent. And various times, these descriptions match what we find in the fossil evidence of certain dinosaurs. Thus, dinosaurs are known directly from their fossils and indirectly from cave drawings. Tapestries and textiles, figurines, carvings, vast belief, and many oral and written eyewitnesses accounts of which are quite old. The Bible states that everything that was creathed upon the earth after his kind was created by God in 6 days of the creation week. Genesis 1:25, including dinosaurs, on the same day of the man and woman also created. Genesis in Genesis 1:26 to 27. Over 1,600 years later, Genesis 8:15 records the pair of each land-dwelling animal when in beneath of the life again includes dinosaurs were taken aboard the ark that would have held over 110,000 square feet of floor space. This ensured that remnant of would preserve throughout the worldwide watery destruction that the fossils made pre-flood dinosaurs. The Book of Job often refers to creatures called the behemoth, with a massive size and a tail like a cedar tree. Describes matches the sauropod dinosaur, that of the sauropod dinosaur. God calls it to Job's attention in the words, "Behold the behemoth which I was made with thee," Job 40:15. Thus, the statement affirms that both behemoth and man were made on the same day. Ezekiel, James, and Paul refer to the Book of Job, authenticating reliable historic testimony. let's see, where am I? Oh, sorry. The fact that the dinosaur firm, soft tissue and been described as still squishy and consistent recognizable blood cells also confirm that recency of dinosaur fossils deposits. Science continues to demonstrate that dinosaurs did not predate humans, that dinosaur kinds did not go extinct if they have at all, if they all have, until after the flood, which occurred only 1,000 years ago. Evidence of okay, yeah, that's the end of the article. Okay, so anyway, there we go. So that's what's pretty much I got here. So that said, here's some things we have to take in consideration here. When, okay, number one, I don't know how much of that is satire. I don't know how much of that is actual people. I think there's a little bit, because when you mark these things down, sometimes you get the comment sections, bantering back and forth. So some of it is mockery, some of it is not. So just so you know. Now, here's what we do know for a fact: that they have proven that Jesus may have existed as a man. The reason why I say may have existed as a man, because they've proven that there was a guy in Jerusalem around the time the Bible was written, about 2,000 years ago, his story, that Jesus, there was 3 of them in Jerusalem at that time. And they tracked it through the name. They did a whole BBC thing on it, and it was pretty interesting, and it made sense. So they scientifically proven that there was a good likelihood this man was there, and that when they found this cloth, and they believe it to be the tomb of Jesus, and there's a couple of them that are debated to be the tomb of Jesus, that was Jesus himself, which was basically a Semite. He wasn't a blue-eyed, blonde-haired guy, that type of thing. But however, other people take different takes from it. Now, where it gets interesting is that, okay, we could say Jesus existed. Now, many religions do refer to a Jesus-like character. You have the sleeping blue-eyed, red-haired giants in China, in those tombs there, the mummies. Giants meaning they were 6'6", 7 feet tall. In the times, those probably would have been very tall people for their times, so referred to as giants, right? So we have those, and you also have the scientists that have actually come out, and people trying to be neutral on it, saying yes, the likelihood of, there's like 90 some odd % that Jesus existed as a man. Now, that said, in Islam, they describe him as a prophet, but not as the son of God, right? So, and they even mention, I think, Jesus more in the Quran than they do Muhammad. That's what I heard anyway. Now, that said, there's two things to consider there. Now, the third one is, of course, the Bibles that talk about Jesus himself. Okay, and then of course the Jews don't believe in Jesus at all, so to speak. So there's banter back and forth, but there is description, they don't believe him as a divine son of God. They believe in God, but they don't believe in Jesus. That type of thing has a lot to do with the crucifixion, right? So, but anyway, you get the idea that it does sound like it was a historical event that did happen with Jesus. So we can say he existed. Okay, we could say with probably 99.9% accuracy, or at least 95% accuracy, that Jesus existed, at least as a man. You could say about that much. So that said, why is that important? Well, because if you look at the Bibles like a history book, it makes more sense than it does if you look at it from the divine. Now, if you look at it from the divine, I have no problem with that. But if you look at it from a history book, then you can try to see if you can pin it down to dates and times. But here's the thing: the description of time is different between people back then and us now. Now we use basically days and hours and weeks and stuff like that. So they might have had a different description of time, which might have made people to believe the 6,000-year-old Earth or the 10,000 years or whatever. They might have, because the descriptions of time are wrong, or not maybe wrong, but misinterpreted. So that is a possibility. That I don't know, so that's just my speculation. But now let's take away the Bible altogether out of this equation. That did Jesus walk with dinosaurs? Well, let's forget about Jesus. Let's forget about the Bible. This is not in the question. How do you explain, and this is a very legitimate thing, how do you explain all these other societies, not from the Middle East whatsoever, the cave drawings, the Nazca, down there in Peru, with the stones with all the dinosaurs on it? How did they come up with these things? Now, there's only a few explanations for that. Number one, they found these fossils These giant, like for example in Argentina, where you have Argentinosaurus, the largest dinosaur that's ever lived on this planet so far, that we know of. Thing is just massive. I think a football and a half field, like a football field and a half long. So if you found the bones from these things, you could probably make figurines kind of mimicking what they might have looked like and drew them out on rocks or whatever. That is a possibility, is that they say, okay, well, these animals might have been mythological dragons or whatever. So in China, they're dragons. So to the Inca or the Nazca, they're these mythological space beings, whatever it is, because you find these gigantic bones. What are they? What are these creatures? So they could get described as many different things in many different cultures. But you do see many different cultures show these things. Now, here's a problem I have with creationists, is sometimes they're so, pardon the pun, but hell-bent on proving God that they actually lie a lot to do this. Now, before I lose everybody here, hear me out. The footprints I remember seeing on Ripley's Believe It or Not, that man walked with dinosaurs, and later out, yes, they proved that the footprints in the mud with the dinosaurs were definitely faked. Now, here's the case in point that I'm going to make. They proved it. They debunked that pretty good. Now, before you even go with carbon dating, never mind, because I know creationists usually don't accept carbon dating. But I want you to think about yourself when you were a kid. Like, I'm a man now. I'm in my 40s or whatever. And they just paved your sidewalk, okay? Nice fresh pavement. And the construction crew goes away for lunch, whatever. What's the first thing a kid does? They run up and they stick their hand in there, right? Yeah, and they immortalize themselves that way. So they pull it out. It's a sloppy hand in there, but you can clearly tell it's a hand. And it stays there. You go back maybe, I don't know, 35 years later, and you go, that was me. Yeah. Anyway, different topic. So yeah, that happens. And if somebody were to, basically do scientific research on that, and try to figure out where that handprint came from, they would probably say, well, it was probably from a, maybe probably an 11-and-a-half-year-old child, in the middle of June on a nice summer day, just after he had 2 ice cream cones or something like that, because there's like, DNA of ice cream in there. Something like that might have happened. Don't want to get too specific, but it was at this street and that street, and this happened. So they would be able to track it pretty good. They would be able to say, yes, for sure, we know that a child made that. But the problem is with these other lines, if you look at fossils, whether it's dinosaur, or not fossils, but like I guess you'd say the dinosaur footprints. Yes, those dinosaur footprints, people say, yes, those are dinosaur footprints because when you look at them, it's very, very, very clear that it's dinosaur footprints, and they're uniform the whole way, for the most part. Like, they erode a bit, and some of the toes go in, but there's a more consistency with it. But with the footprint ones, they look like somebody did it with a stick, or like cut out, wooden feet and did it that way, to over impress. How heavy is a man? How, even in the mud, like how deep of a footprint do you really leave in the mud? So these things were like way down. So it was clear that, and of course the shape was all wrong, stuff like that. They were, it's like I guess they were trying to make it look like wooden sandals or whatever. So that pretty much got debunked. So does that mean that man didn't walk with dinosaurs? Well, again, here's the problem. How do you explain how so many ancient civilizations were giving, very descriptive, not only descriptive, hieroglyphs and stuff like that, or not hieroglyphs, but cave paintings of things that dinosaurs, and also some of these show that it looked like they actually killed one. How do you explain that? So that means, like, this is something that these people thought was so significant that they actually put it into their maybe not folklore, but into their history, that they wanted to preserve this record that we killed this monstrous beast, the behemoth or whatever, the dinosaur, whatever it is, and they put it on cave paintings. Now those things are, with the carbon dating, are proven to be correct. They're not hoax. Some of them might be. This is why the problem, it's the same thing you get with the argument with climate change and stuff like that. You've got hoaxsters on both sides, trying to sway you to one side of the opinion or the other. The way I look at it, I'm thinking that there was probably some dinosaurs or some sort of massive sized beasts running around, maybe thousands of, a few thousand years ago. Look, the last woolly mammoths, they believe, when I was a kid, they were believed to have only died 25,000 years ago. When I was a teenager, they were considered to be living 10,000 years ago. Now they think 3 to 5,000 years ago, because of what they find. Again, just because we don't see the evidence every day. Maybe woolly mammoths only went extinct 1,500 years ago or less. Who knows? Until we find that final, the newest fossil is the newest record, right? And this is the problem with history books and stuff like that in general. Since I was a kid, the amount of times history books have been rewritten, not revised, revisionist history where, okay, no, well, we're the political people in power now, so we're going to change everything. No, but just new findings, new evidence. And it does suggest that there is a lot of evidence outside the religious aspect of it that shows that ancient people came across gigantic beasts. So, what kind of terrible lizards were these things, right? Um, it's really hard to say for sure until we find a fossil that's only 10,000 years old or something like that. But think of the needle in the haystack. I think what might have happened, and this is just my theory, is okay, big space rock comes and smacks the crap out of the planet, kills 99% of the dinosaurs, something like that. We'll just say that. So most people would accept that. And then as things move around or whatever, most of them disappear. So we're at like say 98% dinosaur extinction. But because there was no, even with the maybe there was some vegetation that survived some places in the world where some of the dinosaurs might have lived a little bit longer. And we do know, like, for example, the Greenland shark, that thing can be a couple hundred years old. Maybe dinosaurs, because of their large size and maybe their metabolisms are really slow and they're like turtles. But instead of like turtles living, 600 years or whatever, maybe they can live, maybe dinosaurs can live like 2,000 years. You don't know. We don't know because we don't have all the facts on dinosaurs. We have an idea. I mean, dinosaurs were supposed to be, scaly skinned again when I was a kid, but then it turns out later on, well, no, some dinosaurs had feathers. Oh, and then they made the link between birds and dinosaurs, right? So things change. Things change. But again, until you find the evidence in Smoking Gun, you don't know for sure. But even at that, just because you don't find it doesn't mean it didn't exist. It means there's no proof yet. Now, some atheists that are reasonable will probably argue pretty much the way I'm arguing. And some of the creationists that are reasonable will probably say, okay, well, this guy's making a reasonable challenge. That's fine. But what I'm really doing is I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other. I'm more trying to get people to think for themselves that, okay, yes, if you remove the Bible, you remove Jesus and his pet dinosaur. I mean, trust me, if you had the opportunity to have a pet dinosaur that you could ride all over the place, you would take it. I'm just saying. So if Jesus was a man and he walked around with dinosaurs, I guarantee he rode one. He probably rode around on one. And flying dinosaurs, even better. Think of the pranks you could do to all your friends, swooping down with a pterodactyl, hit him inside the face with a big pterodactyl egg, fly by eggings, pterodactyl eggings. I'm sure it would have been a big problem back then. But anyway, the case in point is that when we're looking at these things, you have to really have an open mind. You can't have a predetermined outcome here, because to me, I can't tell you for sure that man walked with dinosaurs, but I also can't explain why people in ancient I keep saying ancient Iraq in the past, but it's not Iraq. It's as in the Philippines, Malaysia, Malaysia. Anyway, they got basically a stegosaurus 12,000 years ago, carved perfectly, showing what a stegosaurus is. How would they know what one of those things look like? Now, the other thing is that people make the assumption that ancient people were stupid. That there was no way they could figure things out. But when you think about it, it's probably the opposite. I think people will probably look at the Greeks, for example. They were very intelligent for their time. It doesn't mean they weren't spiritual. Doesn't mean they didn't use gods as references and stuff like that. But look at their ability to figure out the stars and the celestial bodies. It's amazing. The ancient Sumerians, that type of thing. How did these people be able to figure that stuff out? So they had to spend a lot of time thinking. And that thinking is probably what led them to the conclusions. Well, look at these giant things. There was probably archaeologists of their day trying to tell us, look, okay, we don't know what this big thing is, but this is our representation of it. And maybe there was a handful of them that survived up to a little while ago. Plus, you have all the cryptozoologists out there, which cryptozoology is always, Bigfoot, Tasmanian wolf, that type of thing. Things that the dodo bird, things that you would chupacabras, all those things that people have talked about. But there's also a lot of sea creatures that were never thought to have existed. For example, gigantic squids. Until these things like magically wash up on your shore, and some of these things are just ginormous. Like unbelievably big. Um, so these things that are not supposed to exist, but yet they're on our planet. There's Plesiosaurs, Loch Ness monster. Like basically those type of things. Did they exist, or is it just all hoax? You don't know, because sometimes, or a lot of the times, it is hoax. But then there's sometimes that there's things that do go bump in the night or stomp in the night. If it's a dinosaur, it just stomps on everything. In Africa, there's basically, even in modern day, people describe a big, huge animal that basically fits the description of a brachiosaur or a brontosaurus type of, you know, they're different levels, sizes, like so. When people describe these things, okay, it could be a tourist trap, it could be that. That's fine, especially because you can never seem to find evidence of these things. But the thing is that just because we haven't found it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So for me, I'm more of the in the camp of I don't necessarily going to go with the Bible or creationism, but I'm thinking there's something more to the story. That how would these people 10,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago, know what a stegosaurus looked like? Again, they didn't have the forensic science that we have, stuff like that, but they were able to put two and two together. Now, was it just kind of like logical? I mean, you're walking along and you see this gigantic dinosaur skeleton just lying there. Well, you're probably going to know it was an animal at one point. How big? Well, you could see the size of it. It was ginormous. What did it look like? Well, you would speculate. I mean, we speculated for years. We still speculate what dinosaurs look like. We don't know for sure. But from time to time, for example, there's that dinosaur hand, that was almost perfectly preserved, millions of years old. How was that? Like just the odds of it, right? And that's really gave a good insight to what kind of look, what they look like. Alligators, crocodiles, or crocodiles specifically. Crocodiles, Sarcosuchus, the, basically ginormous crocodile that existed. Well, all the crocodiles now are descendants of that thing. Thank God that thing's gone. But is it really truly gone? That's the whole thing. And crocodiles and certain sharks have been around since the dinosaurs. So when you look at it that way, is it that impossible to believe? I mean, if you look at Komodo dragon, you look at crocodiles, or some of these crocodiles out there that are over 20 feet long, ginormous. Again, I can't use that word enough just to impress upon you. So we know large creatures like that can exist. Now, most dinosaurs weren't reptiles; they were mammals. So that meant they were a little different. But maybe some dinosaurs were reptiles, which maybe reptiles like turtles and stuff like that, they live a long time. Alligators, I think some of them live up to like 160 years old. Don't quote me on that, but you get the idea. They live long. So who knows? Maybe if you go with the economy of scale of a brontosaurus, maybe a brontosaurus lives like 1900 years or something like that. But then some of them, live just long enough for food to start and vegetation to start back again. And maybe there was small isolated pockets of dinosaurs spread out through the world that did exist up until the time of man. But if we got cave drawings that are showing men fighting dinosaurs, well, it could have been the same thing happened to the dinosaurs that happened to the mammoth, where a lot of mammoth were basically killed as a status symbol. One tribe can only eat so much meat, right? I'm sure they used most of it, but some of them were actually killed off as a status. They believe that that's what happened to a lot of them, is just run them all off the cliff. Well, half the stuff's going to go rotted before you can, you can get 20 tribes on one willing mammoth. You're still not going to eat all that meat before it spoils. So at the rate they killed them off, it'd be like the way the plainsmen hunted buffalo at the turn of the century. It became more of a sport than anything. So picture you being the guy that speared this big dinosaur. You're not thinking of preserving the dinosaur as a tribesman. You're thinking of the status, that you're going to get. Again, we go back to the Adam and Eve thing there. If Adam saved Eve from a dinosaur and he got the woman, well, that legend might live on in other different tribal areas and saying, go kill a dinosaur. Okay, there's like a few of them left over here. Go kill that dinosaur. We'll make a big ritual out of it. Go kill a dinosaur. You can get your choice of any wife, tribal bride that you want. Something like that could have happened. We don't know. Uh, so I don't know. I'm open to the idea. I don't think the Earth is 10,000 years old. I think it's much. I think it's billions of years old. I am more inclined to believe that's scientists. But that said, I think some people get too hardcore into one camp or the other. That if it was written in the Bible, it's obviously not true, or if it's written in the Bible, it's true, without looking at the evidence. But I think just let reason come up. Is it possible? Well, if dinosaurs could exist on the planet, okay, sure, it's possible. They existed on, when dinosaurs existed, by the history books. Yeah, that's at a time when most humans couldn't exist because the oxygen was either too rich for us to breathe and we'd just go into hypoxia, giggle fit, and die, or there just wasn't enough oxygen at all and we would die. Now, that said, there were probably times during those periods where dinosaurs and man might have been comfortable side by side, meaning we could both breathe the same air, etc., etc. So these things were possible. These things were possible. It's just a timing thing. Plus, I don't think we have the whole human story, especially with all the discoveries under the ocean, such as pyramids and stuff like that. Especially that crystal pyramid that's nobody's allowed near. The military is kind of basically protecting that one, in the Ozarks, and not Ozarks, Azores. Anyway, in the Bermuda Triangle area, that type of thing. And the thing about that is that I think a lot of our civilization, especially if it's older than what we think it is, a lot of it is probably going to be where the old coastlines used to be, under the ocean. And we know with sea tidal rise, it's consistent every year pretty much for thousands of years. So if you were to go back further, I mean, they're constantly making discoveries. Here in Canada, they just made a discovery of, they're not sure which native tribe it would be, but just off of Vancouver Island, over the summer they found settlements, just out in the ocean there. And that's what I'm talking about. It's like, okay, so you could almost use it like a time capsule to go back. And just the further out in the ocean you go to, on the continental shelf, you'll probably find that there is other civilizations, and you do find these things. There's enough of them out there right now, so that you can say, okay, well, 5,000 years ago, people would have lived here. 80,000 years ago, they would have lived here, etc., etc. And I think once you start getting out into those areas, that's when you're going to find the strange and the bizarre, such as, Jesus's tomb with, lying right beside his big dinosaur. I mean, you gotta, like all pets, you get attached to them, right? So that's my take on it. Again, like anything, you can't really say one way or another that, until we see the smoking gun, so to speak. And I do understand atheists argue from the point where and deists, they want to see the proof, which is reasonable to ask for. There's nothing against that. And I do understand that, people who are of faith argue from a point of faith, blind faith, meaning we believe it because we believe it to be so because it was written in the good book, and that's it, end of argument. But I think anybody that's not in one hardcore camp or another, I think will probably, I'm not saying we'll see it exactly the way I see it, but we'll probably start to see patterns arising around the world of things popping up at times when they shouldn't be, and that history is, I don't think we probably don't even know 1% of our actual history. I do believe there's so much more to discover, that the idea of keeping an open mind on it is the only logical thing to do. It's the only logical thing to do, because the thing is if you ask questions, you come up with ideas. If you ask questions, sometimes you find answers. But if you can't find answers, sometimes you find a trail. So it's like I said, why would people thousands of years ago put a dinosaur on a cave unless they saw one? Like, what would have represented that? What beast would, and the one that keeps coming up the most is the brontosaurus types, the long neck, Dino. Remember Flintstones Dino, the purple dinosaur there, kind of dog-like dinosaur? Well, dinos. Yeah, all these dinos, Dino the dinos, those things are all like, seem to be the ones, them and Stegosaurus and Triceratops are the ones you seem to see, all the dinosaurs from the Cretaceous period, you start to see there. I believe Brontosaurus was in the Cretaceous period. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, but or whatever. But you get the idea that the dinosaurs that we see could have been around the same time we arrived on the scene. I think human beings are more than 7 million years old. If you add up even all the ancestors or whatever, modern humans are only supposed to be 130,000 years old. But I don't know about that. Now, we got one thing we can say for sure. Between the Smithsonian and the Vatican, I don't know who likes to hide the truth more. The amount of stuff that goes to the Smithsonian that just disappears and never gets to see the light of day again is unbelievable. They're notorious for doing that. Why? Because it becomes political. It doesn't become truth-based or science-based. Now, no matter what, you should always want the truth. Even if it goes against your belief system, you should always want the truth. Period. Because that's the only way to so-called enlightenment or whatever. Or reason. So anyway, I guess I'll leave it at about that. So if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation channel. Links down below. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Try to keep it as civil in the comments because I know some of you guys can get pretty heated on these kind of topics. But you know, it is for the enjoyment. And again, what do you guys think? Whether you're arguing from a faith point of view or not, doesn't matter to me. But for those particularly that would be kind of thinking the way I'm thinking, that are not taking it from a faith point of view, and you're taking it more from a curiosity point of view, is why did these people refer to these behemoths, these dinosaurs? Why do we keep finding cave findings and cave paintings and stuff like that that are thousands of years old? How did these people know what a dinosaur was back then? What's your explanation? All right, so rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Be true to yourself, be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. All right, let's just get into this. All right, so this one, I guess I'll just start off with the disclaimer kind of thing, because I'm going to get two sides of the argument on this. There's going to be the group that, this is all BS and it's impossible and that it's ludicrous and whatever, and they don't even want to entertain the idea. Then the other side is going to be, no, well, that's blasphemy because the book says it's so it has to be so, and you have to believe it or you're a sinner. So that's kind of basically going to be like, I guess, atheism versus creationism. And they're both really, atheism is dogmatic as well. It really is. I look at it as a different type of religion, to just disprove everything until you see proof type of thing. Well, it kind of, just because you haven't proven something yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist. For example, I've never seen a Ferrari 308 up close and personal. Doesn't mean they don't exist, right? That type of thing, because I haven't found the evidence that they exist. I just see it in pictures and stuff like that. I just use that as an example. So there has to be a certain amount of open-mindedness that has to be coming from this. Now, on the other side of the argument, you also have to understand that you are arguing from a point of view of faith. Now, for myself, you would not call me a hardcore Christian at all. I don't really have a practicing religion for myself. I just tend to find these things fascinating. Now, one thing about the people that do argue from a point of religious faith is that they are basically arguing just from that point, faith, meaning they don't have proof, they just believe it because the book says it is so. And they must understand that the people, wanting to see proof, they want to see more than a book that says it's so, because many books can say many different things. So before we get into this, I got basically two kind of things to read here. One's going to be, for some people, it's going to be a little over the top. For some of the creationists, that's going to be their argument, and then the other ones are a little more watered down, but still moving on that. And then you guys can debate back and forth. So I'll start off with this one. Petersburg, Kentucky. A panel of prominent scientists and paleontologists have discovered groundbreaking evidence that Jesus walked with dinosaurs. Jesus and his disciples walked with dinosaurs 2,000 years ago, and the Earth and universe are only 10,000 years old. Independent scientists funded by the Christian Neocon Church of Kentucky have also decided that Adam and Eve wore fashionable garments given by God. This goes against the grains of the popular belief that they wore leaves over their genitalia in the Garden of Eden. There are some myriad of facts that have now been discovered that to be true, scientists working in tandem with archaeologists all over America. evolutionary myth. Professor Alan Johnson of the University of Mobile, Alabama says blasphemers and evolutionists deny the fact that humans and dinosaurs coexist. This is not the true Christian path that God and Jesus wrote about. Children and adults outside America are indoctrinated in the false belief that man did not coexist with dinosaurs straight from early childhood with the books that they teach in. It reinforces their schooling system, the media, and the entertainment industry. God wrote in the Bible that He created humans and dinosaurs on the same day. Jesus walked and talked with the dinosaurs. He even had one as a pet, an Algiosaurus. I can't remember which one. I think that's like a brontosaurus looking thing, long neck, long tail, big fat body like an elephant. That type of thing, which he kept in his carpentry workshop. Must have been a big shop. We have eyewitness accounts and scientific evidence about this, folks, and it's all in the Bible. The scientific study was not only encompassed with profound discoveries in 3 continents, but it also took 20 years of research and finally come up with the definitive answers to everything. Now, okay, this is probably going to be the part that's going to offend most people. Okay, depending on where you are. George W. Bush has been named the patron of the creationist movement. God help them. Movement, and was last year honored by the Kentucky Fry University of Masters in Younger Studies. Now, this is where we get into the kind of mockery part of it, right? Again, you got different people arguing here, so. The Kentucky Fry has also discovered dinosaur footprints dated back 2,000 years ago alongside the footprints of man. Incredible discoveries long enough to cement in theory. And it's hardcore discoveries like the dinosaur claw mark and on the Turin Shroud, which have been proved evolutionists wrong in every way. More great Bible facts. Jesus was a pale, white-skinned, blue-eyed, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, and his endeared him. And this endeared him his pet Algiosaurus. Agilosaurus, or whatever how you say it. Okay, so there's going to be mockeries here. Going back to another argument here, there is evidence that suggested Jesus and the disciples had mullets and haircuts. Okay, this is still the mockery guy. The disciples of the Messiah would often travel packs of large flying dinosaurs similar to the, I'm not going to say their names, but basically pterodactyls on their way to the Sea of Galilee. The large flying reptile